All right, today we're diving into a molecule that's a huge part of what we eat and, what we're literally made of, but it's often totally misunderstood. I'm talking about the fatty acid. Let's get into it. So, you hear this question all the time, right? Is fat good for you? Is it bad for you? Well, the truth is, the real story is about its building block, the fatty acid. And believe me, the answer is way more fascinating than a simple yes or no. So what in the world is a fatty acid? Okay, just think of it as the most basic, fundamental piece of all fat. I absolutely love this analogy of them being like Lego bricks. Our body uses these little bricks to build all sorts of incredible things. And just like Legos, what they end up creating all depends on where they came from and what our body needs at that very moment. Okay, so if they're so important, where does our body get these little building blocks? Let's take a look at the fatty acid supply chain, if you will. Our body is just so resourceful. It turns out it has 3 completely different ways to get all the fatty acids it needs. And we're going to start with the one you're probably already thinking of. Right, the first and most obvious source is simply the food we eat. Every single time you eat things like oils or nuts or avocados, you're just loading up on fatty acids. But here's the thing, they don't just float around loose in our food. They're actually neatly packaged into something called a triacylglycerol. The best way to think of this is like a little molecular lunchbox. It cleverly bundles 3 fatty acids all together. And get this one type of molecule makes up something like 90% of the fat we eat. But what happens if you don't get quite enough from your diet? Well, no problem. Your body is also a remarkably efficient little fatty acid factory. Yeah, this process, it's called synthesis, and it mostly happens in our liver and in our fat cells. Our body takes this universal starting molecule called acetyl-CoA. You can kind of think of it as a biological starter dough. And it uses this master enzyme called fatty acid synthase to build brand new fatty acids completely from scratch. It's a really amazing piece of our own internal engineering. And finally, we have the third source. Now, this one isn't about bringing in new fatty acids. It's all about accessing the ones you've already saved up. It's kind of like dipping into your body's long-term energy pantry. This process is called lipolysis. So when your body needs a shot of energy, say you're between meals or you're exercising, it sends a signal to your fat cells to break open those molecular lunchboxes we talked about, the stored triacylglycerol, releasing those fatty acids back into your system so they can be used for fuel. Okay, so we know where they come from. But now for the big question, what is their mission? What do these molecules actually do? Well, it turns out they have 4 absolutely critical jobs, and they're all deeply connected. I mean, their roles are just incredibly diverse. They touch almost every single part of our biology. They're generating energy for right now, they're storing it for later, they're building the very structure of our cells, and they're even acting as these powerful chemical messengers. Let's look a little closer at that energy role. It's pretty cool. On one hand, fatty acids can be sent straight to our cellular power plants, the mitochondria, to get burned for immediate energy. But on the other hand, they can be bundled up and stored as that triacylglycerol, creating this really dense energy reserve that can fuel us when we're fasting. It's basically the difference between using fuel right this second versus filling up the tank for a long trip. So beyond energy, fatty acids have this absolutely vital structural role. They're not just fuel. They are quite literally the bricks that build our bodies. Think about it. Every single one of your trillions of cells is surrounded by this protective membrane. And those membranes, they're mostly made of these molecules called phospholipids, which are built, you guessed it, from fatty acids. So without fatty acids, we couldn't even form the cells that make us who we are. And finally, we get to what might be their most sophisticated job. Certain fatty acids, they act as the starting material for these incredibly powerful molecular messengers that regulate all sorts of key functions in the body. Here's a quick rundown of how that works. It all starts with an essential fatty acid, like linoleic acid, that we have to get from our diet. Our body then converts that into another fatty acid called arachidonic acid. And this molecule becomes the launchpad for a whole family of potent signaling molecules called eicosanoids, which control vital processes like inflammation. It's just this amazing chain reaction, and it all starts from one fatty acid we ate. So as you can see, fatty acids are so much more than just a source of calories. They have this really complex playbook of roles and fates inside our bodies.
This table does a great job of tying it all together. You can see right here that whether a fatty acid comes from your diet or your liver makes it, it's incredibly versatile. It can be used for energy, for storage, for building cells, or for sending signals. But when they're released from storage, their mission is totally laser-focused: provide energy and provide it fast.
You know, when you take a step back and look at the whole picture, it just becomes crystal clear. From fueling our muscles to building our cells and directing all these biological processes, fatty acids really are the ultimate multitaskers of our biology. It's pretty amazing when you stop and think about it, isn't it? Fuel, bricks, and messengers, all from just one type of molecule. It really makes you wonder, what other secret jobs are the foods we eat doing inside of us right now?